The silence that fell over Blackstone's, Atlanta's most exclusive restaurant, was so thick it seemed to have weight. Conversation ceased, cutlery froze in mid-air, and dozens of eyes fixed on the small space between the tables. 9-year-old Sophia Harrington was visibly shaking. Her legs, trapped in metal braces, wavered as she reached out to Darius Jackson, the restaurant's only black waiter. The live jazz quartet had just begun a soft melody, and the girl's impulse to ask someone to dance came without warning. "Madam, control your daughter." Manager Reynolds' sharp voice cut through the silence. "This is inappropriate. This is not a dance hall, and our employees are not here to entertain children." Victoria Harrington, CEO of Harrington Technologies and one of the richest women in the country, swallowed hard. It was the first time she had taken Sophia out since the accident that had partially paralyzed her legs, a mistake she would not repeat. "Sophia, sit down." The order came low but firm. Darius remained motionless, his gaze shifting between the manager, the powerful businesswoman, and the girl whose hand was still hanging in the air. In his 3 years working there, he had learned to become invisible, especially to customers like Harrington. "Ms. Reynolds, I'm leaving. My shift is over." His voice sounded calm as he removed his apron and placed it on the tray. Then, to everyone's amazement, he smiled at Sophia and took her hand. "I can't dance in an apron." Victoria stood up abruptly. "What do you think you're doing?" Darius held her gaze. "I'm accepting an invitation, ma'am." Before anyone could interfere, Sophia took a hesitant step forward. Her foot dragged painfully across the floor, and the metal of her braces screeched. But Darius didn't try to guide her or hurry her. He simply adjusted his own pace to hers. "He's getting fired tomorrow," whispered a man at the next table. Victoria watched, paralyzed. A sudden memory struck her. Robert, her late husband, dancing with Sophia in the living room. "It's not about perfection," he had said. "It's about connection." As Darius followed Sophia's clumsy steps, something in the girl's eyes changed. Fear gave way to concentration. Shame gave way to shy pride. For the first time since the accident, she wasn't being guided, she was leading. "Ms. Harrington." The manager's voice interrupted her thoughts. "I can assure you this will never happen again. He will be properly disciplined." Victoria didn't respond. The entire restaurant seemed to wait for her reaction. After all, a woman of her power could end anyone's career with a single word. Sophia's smile, however, was the only sound that echoed in her mind. Darius led the girl back to the table after 3 dance steps. "Thank you for asking me," he said formally. "It was an honor." When he turned to leave, Victoria stopped him. "Wait," her voice sounded different. "What's your full name?" "Darius Jackson, ma'am." Victoria nodded slowly, then took a card from inside her jacket. "My office tomorrow at 10 a.m. The entire restaurant held its breath. Darius accepted the card without showing any emotion, but his hand trembled slightly. "Mom," Sophia called as he walked away. "Why did you do that?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Victoria watched her daughter and for a brief moment saw not just the child Robert had left in her care, but a complete human being whose needs she had systematically ignored. As dinner proceeded in awkward silence, no one noticed Darius's glance before he left, not out of fear, but out of a calm determination that contrasted with the storm brewing in Victoria Harrington's eyes. The lobby of Harrington Tower sparkled with its glass and marble walls. Darius Jackson immediately felt out of place in his best outfit. The people passing by wore clothes that probably cost more than his yearly rent. "Darius Jackson to see Miss Harrington," he said to the receptionist, who examined him before making a call. 22nd floor, Mr. Powell will see you." In the elevator, Darius took a deep breath. It wasn't fear he felt. It was a quiet determination that came from having faced worse. Mr. Powell was a man in his 50s with a sharp gaze. Ms. Harrington is in a conference call. Please follow me. As he walked through the hallways, Darius felt the curious stares of the employees. A black man being escorted through the executive offices was rare enough to cause speculation. She had you fired, didn't she? Powell asked suddenly when they were alone. It happens. Powerful clients call, and people like you lose their jobs. Powell adjusted his glasses. Employees who don't know their place. Darius smiled, not amused. And where exactly would that be? Before Powell could answer, his phone rang. She'll see you now. Victoria Harrington's office took up half the floor. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Atlanta looked like a distant code playground. The woman stood gazing out at the city, as if it were her personal property. Ms. Harrington, Darius greeted her formally. Victoria turned, a mask of studied control. Mr. Jackson, thank you for coming. She pointed to a chair. Please. The silence that followed was calculated, a tactic Darius recognized immediately. Do you have a background? Victoria finally asked. Excuse me? Education? College? Darius kept his gaze steady. Master's degree in pediatric physical therapy from Emory, incomplete doctorate in adaptive movement therapy. Something flashed across Victoria's face, surprise. And you work as a waiter? I work 3 jobs, the restaurant, teaching at a community center, and as a private therapist when I can get clients. Victoria moved to her desk, picking up a folder. I did some research on you. I wanted to understand who the person was who danced with my daughter. She opened the folder, revealing photos of a community center. Boundless Steps, you founded 4 years ago. Darius sat up straighter. I co-founded it with my brother, Andre, a movement program for children with physical disabilities. Victoria leafed through some documents, which is now about to close due to lack of funding. I didn't come here to ask you for money, Ms. Harrington. Then why did you come? Because you invited me. Victoria laughed softly, a joyless sound. Fair enough. She stood up again. I want you to work for me. Darius blinked, genuinely taken aback. As a waiter in your house? Victoria's face hardened. As a therapeutic companion for Sophia, her daughter's name seemed difficult for her to say. I have the best specialists in the country, Victoria continued. But what you did yesterday, she paused as if the words betrayed her. It was just a dance, Miss Harrington. It was the first time I've seen her smile since the accident. The admission was painful. I don't want a dancer for my daughter. I want someone who can do what you did, follow, not lead. I can pay you 5 times what you're making now. Darius stood up. No. Victoria looked shocked, like someone unaccustomed to hearing that word. I don't work for people who see only my color before they see my competence, he explained calmly. And I definitely don't work for people who try to buy solutions to emotional problems. Victoria's face flushed. You're turning down an offer that would solve your financial problems out of pride? Out of dignity, Darius corrected, and because your daughter deserves more than someone hired to pretend to care. He walked to the door, then paused. Sophia doesn't need more experts. She needs space to lead her own life. You don't know my daughter. No, Darius agreed, but I know people like her. People whose physical limitations are nothing compared to the invisible cages we build around them. He took a card from his pocket and placed it on the table. Boundless Steps classes on Mondays and Wednesdays at 5 p.m. If you'd like to bring Sophia, the first class is free. The following Monday, Darius was at the reception desk of the community center when Andre came running up. There's a Rolls-Royce parked outside, he whispered, and you won't believe who's inside. Through the window, Darius saw the luxurious car. Sophia was in the back seat, looking anxiously out the window. Victoria remained in the driver's seat, her hands still on the steering wheel, as if fighting an internal battle. "She's not coming in," Andre predicted. "Women like her don't come to places like this." Darius smiled, remembering Sophia's gaze during those brief moments of dancing. Don't underestimate the power of a determined daughter. As they watched, the car door opened. Sophia got out slowly, adjusting her braces. Then, to everyone's surprise, Victoria got out too. "I told you she'd come," Darius murmured. Andre stared at him. "What did you do?" Darius didn't answer, but his eyes sparkled with a secret. In his small apartment, hidden in his desk drawer, was a notebook filled with notes about children like Sophia and women like Victoria Harrington. Years of observation, research, and a plan that had begun with a simple acceptance of an invitation to dance. What Victoria didn't know was that Darius wasn't just a waiter who had agreed to dance with her daughter. He was a man with a mission, and her empire of isolation was about to face its greatest challenge. The simple truth that some of the greatest lessons in life cannot be bought. They must be lived. Boundless Steps operated out of an old community gymnasium. When Victoria and Sophia entered, children with various mobility devices practiced free movements to the sound of a light beat. "Ms. Harrington," Darius approached. "Welcome, Sophia." Sophia watched the children in awe. A boy in a wheelchair spun in circles while a girl with a prosthetic leg created a sequence of steps. "It looks chaotic," Victoria commented, visibly uncomfortable. "There is structure," Darius replied. "It's just not the one you recognize." He turned to Sophia. "Would you like to join in?" The girl nodded enthusiastically, but looked at her mother hesitantly. "Go on," Victoria said tensely. "I'll be right here." As Darius guided Sophia to the group, Andre approached Victoria and offered her a chair. The first day is always the hardest for the parents, not the kids. "This isn't therapy," Victoria argued. "I hired the best rehabilitation specialists." "And how has that been working for Sophia?" Andre asked gently. The gymnasium door opened, and an older man entered, walking with a sleek carbon fiber prosthetic leg. He had silver hair and a commanding presence. "Dr. William Hayes," Andre whispered, "biomechanical engineer specializing in adaptive movement, retired from Johns Hopkins." The man greeted several children before noticing Victoria. "Ms. Harrington, you've rejected my research proposal twice in the last year." "Dr. Hayes, I didn't expect to see you here," Victoria replied. "I oversee the research program," he explained. "We're studying how self-directed approaches to movement affect neuromotor reconfiguration in children with mobility challenges." "Research?" Victoria frowned. "I thought this was just a community dance class." Darius returned, leaving Sophia exploring movements with another child. Boundless Steps is a pilot motor rehabilitation program based on the theory of movement autonomy, he explained. "Why do you work as a waiter if you lead a research program?" "Because we don't have adequate funding yet, and because people like you rejected us twice." The penny dropped. "You were Dr. Hayes' proposal co-author," Victoria realized. "Mr. Jackson has an incomplete doctorate because he had to leave his program to care for his brother after their parents' accident," Dr. Hayes explained, "but his theoretical work is groundbreaking." "You knew who I was at the restaurant?" Victoria concluded. "From the moment you walked in," Darius confirmed. "And when Sophia got up to dance, I recognized the opportunity to show, not tell." A group of reporters entered the gymnasium, and Victoria immediately tensed. "What's this? Part 2 of the plan?" Darius smiled slightly. Andre showed Victoria a newly published article. "Innovative mobility rehabilitation methodology shows promising results." We published our first results today, Dr. Hayes explained, and we invited the press. You used my daughter for a public relations stunt, Victoria accused, her voice pure ice. Darius led her into a side room where photos of dozens of children adorned the walls, each with handwritten progress statistics. On the last wall was an empty frame. What's that? She asked. Our future. The full rehabilitation center we could build if we had the resources. 400 children a year instead of 40. You orchestrated all this, Victoria muttered. The dance, the meeting, bringing me here on press day? I saw an opportunity and took it. 3 months ago, when you canceled our meeting without reading the proposal, I promised myself I'd fight for this. Andre interrupted. It's Sophia. They rushed back. Sophia was in the center of the room, surrounded by other children. Someone had turned off the music, and everyone watched in silence. The girl had removed one of her braces and was trying to balance on just one support. Sophia. Victoria started forward, but Darius stopped her. Wait, he whispered. Watch. Sophia took a deep breath, focused, and then to everyone's amazement, she took a complete step without full support. It was small, shaky, but entirely her own. The children cheered, and camera flashes went off. Victoria's face, usually composed, was now exposed with unshed tears. That's why we created Boundless steps, Darius said softly. It's not about perfect steps. It's about first steps on your own. Victoria watched her daughter not as a problem to be managed, but as a complete person discovering her own strength. This could have been done without manipulating me, she said finally. It could have been if you had answered our calls or read our proposals. The reporters noticed Victoria, and a murmur grew as Sophia, oblivious to the tension, continued practicing her new step with an expression of pure concentration. Victoria was cornered. Before her lay two options: withdraw in anger, confirming her reputation as cold and calculating, or embrace the moment her daughter had created. Victoria faced the reporters waiting for her reaction. Her daughter had just taken a step on her own in front of the cameras, and Darius Jackson had skillfully led her to this impossible moment. Miss Harrington, a reporter approached. Could you comment on your presence at Boundless Steps today? Is it true that your foundation rejected funding for this program twice? Victoria glanced at Sophia, then, to everyone's surprise, she smiled. You know what's hardest for someone in my position? Victoria addressed the reporter. Admitting when we're wrong. Harrington Technologies is pleased to announce a commitment to fully fund Boundless Steps for the next 5 years and to build a permanent rehabilitation center based on the methodology developed by Dr. Hayes and Mr. Please. Jackson. Camera flashes exploded. Andre let out a cry of surprise. On one condition, she added, watching Darius tense up, that Mr. Jackson retain complete autonomy over the program and its methodology. No corporate interference. 6 months later, the new Boundless Steps Rehabilitation Center opened its doors. The project wasn't the most luxurious the Harrington Foundation had ever funded, but it was the most innovative, with every space designed with input from the children themselves. In the center of the main hall, Sophia, now wearing only a lightweight brace on her right leg, led a small choreographed routine with 3 other children. Her movements were still limited, but they flowed with a confidence no doctor had predicted. Victoria watched from a distance, not interfering. She doesn't need you to hold her anymore, Darius said, approaching quietly. No, Victoria agreed, but she still needs me to be around. Crucial difference. Victoria turned to face him. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For teaching me to follow. A reporter approached. Miss Harrington, how does it feel to see your daughter's progress? Victoria looked at Sophia, who was now helping a younger boy find his balance. I'm proud, not of what she's overcome, but of what she's created for others. And what's been the biggest lesson you've learned on this journey? Victoria Harrington, the woman who had once been known only for her technological empire, looked directly into the camera. True leaders aren't those who guide others down the path they believe is right, but those who have the courage to follow when someone shows them a better way. A year later, the Boundless Steps program expanded to 3 new cities. Darius received the Pediatric Rehabilitation Innovation Award, and his methodology began to be implemented in hospitals across the country. Sophia, now using only a light cane on difficult days, enrolled in regular school and became a youth spokesperson for the program. Victoria learned the hardest and most valuable lesson of all, that true power does not lie in controlling every move, but in knowing when it is time to take a step back and let others lead the way. In a world where powerful people rarely change their perspectives and where those without power often remain in the shadows, the story of Victoria, Darius, and Sophia reminds us that true transformation occurs when we cross the invisible boundaries that separate us. When a CEO learns from a waiter, when a mother follows in her daughter's footsteps,